Welcome to First Unitarian.
We gather on Sundays to celebrate life, to witness to truth, and to be with each other in life's challenges and joys.
All week long, we're building a community, one connection and one person at a time. We care for each other and our children, we grow our souls, and we transform our world.
We're glad you're here.
Welcome home.
I invite you now to join me in singing our opening hymn, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door, also known by the poem's original title, A Prayer for This House.
May nothing evil cross this door, and may ill fortune never pry about these windows. May the roar and rain go by. By faith made strong, the rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. This hearth, though all the world grow chill, will keep you warm. Peace shall walk softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into a shrine. With laughter drown the raucous shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in.
Good morning, and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester's online service. Here at First Unitarian, our mission is through spiritual connection and community. We listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. We acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, keepers of the Western Door and part of the Haudenosaunee people, on whose ancestral lands First Unitarian now stands. I'm Shannon, membership coordinator, and leading worship today are the Reverend Sherry, Tommy, Brownlee, Elizabeth, and Avi. Behind the scenes, as always, we have our tech team, our ushers, and our greeters, everyone helping us make things come together so we can be in service. It's not Sunday morning also without you. So if you please like to share in our chat where you're coming from, where you're gathering with us, we'd love to hear about it. Also, if you're newish here or new to our community, please see the chat in the chat box, the link in the chat box for how to connect more deeply with our community. Also, if you're going through a hard time or you're worried about someone else, please check in with our chat usher, with our pastoral care usher here today, or you can also reach out to our pastoral care team. After service today, we have several groups going on. First, of course, if you want to meet new people, please stick around for that. We'll have our connection groups. We'll also have a room to meet Brownlee and get to know him. We'll also have a room to talk about the sermon. And we have a special group today, a room today about anti-racism. So please feel free to pick which one is going to feed your soul this morning. Now let us all take a deep breath together as we settle into this sacred time and place. If you have a chalice, please join us in lighting your chalice as well and saying our unison words. May the flame we now kindle inspire us to use our power to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, and to seek liberation in the fullness of community.
Good morning. During our camping travels in 2020, my wife and I visited the state of Michigan, and everybody knows that the state of Michigan looks kind of like a thumb or a hand, and above there is the Upper Peninsula. You can get across the Mackinac Bridge to get to the Upper Peninsula, and then up on the Upper Peninsula, there's another peninsula that sticks out in the Lake Superior, and that's the Kiwiana Peninsula, and we camped at the very tip of the Kiwiana Peninsula. Now up there nearby is a monastery, and the monks there make thimbleberry jam. Now thimbleberries are little tiny raspberries, and they don't travel very well. They're very delicate, so you make jam out of them. The monks have a beautiful wooden chapel that's right on the shores of Lake Superior, and it is certainly a holy space. And right across the street, there's a little shop where they sell the thimbleberry jam, and I'm certain that's a holy space. And then there's certainly a kitchen and a workshop where the monks make the thimbleberry jam, and for them that is certainly a holy space. My personal holy space is my woodworking workshop. I spend many hours in the long, cold winter months making useful and beautiful things out of wood. I've heard it called hybrid making. I think that's pretty appropriate. My woodworking workshop is a holy space because it's filled with love. I make things for the people I love, and I make them with care because I want the best for those that I love. I want people to enjoy what I make and find it useful, and to think of me when they look at it. My woodworking workshop is a holy space because it requires devotion. It's no place for impatience or laziness or carelessness. No, you must be fully present to do woodworking. You got to be focused and steadfast. And making a large, complicated piece might take, 1,000 steps. Making even this simple little drawer takes about 92 steps, all of them written down and executed with care. Where do you spend your time? Where are you most devoted? Where do you express your love? These are your personal holy spaces. Isn't that one of the many reasons we come to church? Certainly our sanctuary on Winton Road is a holy space. And church services on Sunday on Zoom are a holy space. And they supplement, but not replace, our own personal holy spaces. May it be so.
I invite you now to join me in singing My Favorite Things from The Sound of Music by Rodgers and Hammerstein. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Cream-colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that melt into springs. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
One of my favorite sacred sources among Unitarian Universalists is psychology experiments. the study of human behavior and how we are when we are together is one of the richest sources of what is sacred and holy, as well as what is unholy that I know of. And perhaps not surprisingly, given what I do, one of my favorite experiments has to do with the Bible story, the Good Samaritan, and seminarians, people in training for ministry. Some of you may know this story. Settle in. Like all sacred stories, it bears repeating. And if the test of time over the last 40 years since this experiment has meant we need to whittle some of the edges down a bit, well, that's part of story making also. So 40 years ago at Princeton Theological Seminary, some researchers wondered if preparing students, preparing people in a helping profession, preparing people who were training to be ministers with a story about helping strangers would help them help strangers. The story of the Good Samaritan, in extreme brief, has to do with someone who's in need, injured, roadside, and various religious professionals pass on by. But the Samaritan, someone who's considered an outsider in the context of this story, stops, helps, and stays with this person, pays out of their own pocket for this person's room and board, and makes sure that they will be okay. So these seminarians were prepared to preach or give a lecture on this. And I don't know where I went. Here I am. So these researchers wondered if seminarians prepared with this story might be more likely to help someone. And so they asked half their students to prepare to preach on this story. And they asked half the students in this experiment to give some other sort of talk, just a presentation on various jobs one could have, something task-based, not religiously oriented. And then they sent them across campus. That was one variable, these two stories, but some were also told that they were late, and others were told they had plenty of time, but they should head over anyway. The real test was on that journey when they, like the Samaritan and the religious professionals in the biblical story, passed by someone who seemed like they might be in need of help. It wasn't clear if the person was drunk or injured, but these students were given a pathway right by this person. And there wasn't any difference between those who had the religious story in mind and those who were prepared to give a job talk. No discernible or statistically relevant difference in who stopped and who didn't to help this person. There was a difference, though. And this one has stood the test of time in repeated experiments. People in a rush, well, 1 out of 10 stopped. If you knew you were late, you might show up across campus worried about that person you had seen. You might mention it to the attendant there. You might be a little frazzled, but 9 out of 10 times, people didn't stop. But those who had plenty of time, 1 out of 2. Not too shabby. Good Samaritans lie within us all, but so too do those who are in a rush, who are harried, who are already late and frazzled. So let's pray for these seminarians, shall we? Please join me in breath, in attention, in body. Breathing in, we know we are alive. Breathing out, we are grateful for this day. If your feet reach the floor, May you feel the earth pushing back with every ounce of all the weight that you can give it. And if you're making breakfast or folding laundry, may every cracked shell and every crease be a prayer. Spirit of life, source of endings and beginnings, God of many names, no name at all, and one abundant love. We are waiting for someone, something to pass by. Drunk or injured, tired or in need. We come to this place hoping. We come waiting. We are harried and frazzled, already late, rushing by for a good reason or not. We come to this place not always noticing that we have already arrived somewhere holy. We are creating the conditions for others to live out of their deepest values or miss the mark and need to try again. May the ways in which we are complicit with systems of violence or simply absent-minded be given a chance to do again, to cross campus, to take that journey, and to help when we can. May we not rush others when it does not call for it. Near and far, the pines of Parrington and in Ukraine, and in many places in between. We lift up here in prayer all those whose homes and communities perch on the edge of safety and uncertainty. Near and far, for all those in our community and beyond, and for the inner chambers of our heart, and all that has transpired since we were last together. Let us share in the silence made sacred by our gathering. Every Sunday, we gather as a community and we have the opportunity to care and be cared for. We affirm the milestones of life and the moments of growth we are experiencing. We turn our attention to all that we are thankful and to the losses that we are grieving. And so we come into our ritual of community care. Each of us is invited to share in the chat, to say out loud, or to hold in the silent sanctuary of your heart the gratitude, the grieving, and the growth that is most present in your heart this morning. So all that lives within you, all that is true in our lives, may be held in the loving embrace of this community. You're invited to share in the chat as our music continues, our meditation, reflection, and prayer.
please join me in singing Loosen, Loosen. We'll sing it twice together and then as a round. You may choose to lead or to echo. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, in your muscles and bones. Let go, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Let go, let go, let go. Let go, let go, let go.
Each week, members and friends generously contribute to our offering, which helps us sustain and grow our community. This collection supports the work and witness of our church, and each week we give half of this collection to a partner organization, helping those in need and working to create a more just and loving world. This week, we're sharing our plate collection with the Susan B. Anthony House. The National Susan B. Anthony House and Museum interprets the great reformer's vision and story, preserves and shares her National Historic Landmark home and headquarters, collects and exhibits artifacts related to her life and work, and offers tours and interpretive programs to inspire and challenge individuals to make positive change. You can give online at rochesterunitarian.org/donate or by Venmo or Simple Church. Our offering will now be received with gratitude.
You ever have the experience, I bet you do, it seems like it happens more and more often, where you think that you're talking about something with someone else because you're using a word that you know, and it becomes clear a few minutes into the conversation that what they're talking about is very, very different. You think you're talking about the same thing, but it's not the case. Those words apparently have at least two different meanings. This happened to me recently when talking with a friend who works for another faith-based organization, a different religious tradition, but Quakers, who I will admit I often think of as like us with less talking. There are some important differences, though. My friend who works for this organization was talking about how they're struggling with holding space, that each and every quarterly scheduling meeting they have, they struggle to hold space. I wondered what's going on at their scheduling meetings that those conversations are so tense, so fraught. I think of holding space as the container that we do. It's fancy religious talk for creating a conversation, making sure that difficult things can happen or be said, or simply being present. What could be so hard about holding space at a scheduling conversation? Was this small team of four so wildly apart in their priorities that they wouldn't be able to have a conversation about their calendars? That hint of conflict was too much for my Quaker friend, and they laughed. That wasn't what they meant by holding space at all. They weren't talking about sitting in a hospital room, processing deep grief. They weren't talking about congregational meetings in which an entire community would need to vote on whether they wanted a building or a minister. They weren't talking about anything like that. They simply meant leaving open time on their work calendar, that their team had a practice, a deeply ingrained Quaker practice of holding space, which simply meant empty time. This, it turned out, was very Quakerly, but not at all what I expected. This setting of boundaries, this clarity of need for space, to not be rushed, to not know everything there will be to know, to 3 months ahead of time say, I need to have this space open because something will come up that I will want to respond to or be attentive to, be present to, be alive to, had more to do with what I understood holding space to be than I'd realized. But this wasn't a practice that I had ever heard of. Sure, schedule to 80% or keep some time available, that makes sense. But an entire office team just scheduling empty space, I didn't know what to do with that. I could see why they were having trouble. Many of us struggle to set boundaries around how we want to spend our time, our energy, our money. Many of us have either entered into a rhythm that works pretty well for us most of the time, or because of COVID changes or precautions, been forced into schedules that are more spacious or more stifling than we would have otherwise chosen. But lately I've been approaching both scheduling and other decisions, thanks to my Quaker friends, less with the approach of saying no and more of saying yes to the things I do want, the things I do value, the things I want more of in my life and in the world that I am hoping to co-create. Local circus artist Avi Prince Nadworny the one who so elegantly and somewhat easily, it seemed, performed just now for us on the cry wheel. He admits it's taken a full decade to get to where he is now. Back injuries and falls and courageous restarts are important, but simply practice, simply deciding that spinning on a wheel was something he wanted to do and having a body and the time and the resources to make it possible, but also the commitment and the goal. In a TED Talk that he presented to our Rochester community just a few years ago, Avi also does the math for us in a number of his other skills. He learned to backflip by practicing an hour a day for 6 months. He learned to walk by practicing 4 hours a day for a year. That was when he was young, but he still claims it was when he set his mind to it. Whether or not it was intentional, it is true that he was singularly focused at that point in his life. The growth and development of young people puts those of us, most of us older, to shame. The Good Samaritans, those who wish to be helpful and those who didn't notice. They found that the most essential distinction between living out of their deepest values, living into the stories that they proclaimed and told and preached, was not simply a stated commitment, but time. Someone having held the space for them, saying, you can head over now, even though you're not in a rush. Or their own ability, perhaps, to show up late, whether that's rude or simply a recalculation in the moment. But in the 40 years since this experiment was first conducted and has since been repeated again and again, because that is how science works, other variables emerge. Other variables that, as it turned out, are more significant than even the time distinction. The single greatest shift, the single greatest change that influences whether or not someone is likely to stop or not, is being in the company of others. Having someone else present. And this experiment has been repeated enough times that we have variations that tell us about the quality of human company in this interaction between two people. When there's another human nearby, not journeying with the student rushing, not always students now, as the experiment has been repeated in multiple places over many times. If there's someone nearby, the person's less likely to stop. Whether it's a bystander effect or simply the idea that, well, perhaps someone's already got this. That person's presence means that you're less likely to stop. The experiment reverses, though. The shift and the change reverses when those who are journeying together come across someone who may be in need of help. Those who are journeying together, more than those who have the luxury of time, Those who are journeying together are the most likely to stop. And it's unclear through repeated experiments whether it's that the company of a friend makes you more likely to take the risk of human interaction, when it's unclear what this person on the roadside or path side needs. Some of us bring fears of bodily harm or simply awkwardness, and maybe having a friend helps us overcome that barrier. Or maybe it's the God effect. I'm naming God here as your friend, though all of you certainly know that neither your friend nor you are God. So there's a bit of the divine in all of us. But being observed, being watched, knowing that you passing someone by will be known by someone who cares about you. Perhaps that's enough of a push to overcome that barrier too. We don't know the pathways of the human heart here, but repeated experiment again and again is clear. A luxury of time and the company of others are the holy spaces needed to live out of proclaimed values. To say again and again that the Bible says you should stop and help. Experimentally, it turns out it makes no difference. And so that I get up and I say to all of you and I preach, and I want us to be a community that reaches out when we are in need of help, even when we don't know what that help should be. And even though I say again and again to all of you, and I preach, and I want us to be a community that stops and helps each other. The proclaiming is not the thing. Companions for the journey and the time to make a difference. Fortunately, we do have some control over these and some suggestions and encouragement. Here in this community, we say each and every week that spiritual connection in community is the way we achieve and pursue our mission. These are no mere abstractions. In Soul Matters groups and in other ways that people gather, by sharing the journeys of our lives and our hearts here in the chat during worship, or on the phone in conversation, or through a friendly email or card to someone you haven't seen at church in a while. We are each other's spiritual companions, our friends on the pathway to that assignment that we're already late for, and harried and frazzled and maybe not fully prepared, but have a lot of really good and righteous ideas to proclaim. And as for the scheduling, our Quaker friends offer some good advice here. Tomorrow, we launch the pursuit of Daniel's Law. Last year, on Sundays and throughout the week, Daniel Prude's death activated many of us in this community into protest and questions around what we could do better, what we could do in the face of unnecessary loss of life. Tomorrow, we join with others to pursue legislation that ensures that those who are most likely to be able to help those in mental health crises arrive first at the scene. I will admit, I'm scheduled to be on a plane tomorrow. It seems a foolhardy thing in COVID times. It seems a foolhardy thing With a recent back injury from snow shoveling, it seems a foolhardy thing on this largest global day of travel. Tomorrow is the Lunar New Year, and I'd hope to spend it with my family in California. Like the hundreds of millions of Chinese people who will travel to their hometowns tomorrow to be with their families. I will miss the launch. I hope there will be those of you here on this call and otherwise who will be there and know that I did not show up. I hope it encourages me next time to show up. And I hope that this scheduling snafu encourages me and all of you to take a page out of the Quaker's notebook and to do as you, Minister Elizabeth Wen, invites us to do, which is to know we cannot show up all of the time. But if again and again, we find our schedules too full to live the lives that we most want, to live out of our deepest values, to seek justice and activism opportunities, to be with our families and our loved ones, or to get exceptionally good at circus acts, well, we better start scheduling differently. Here in community, I invite you into the chat to name one thing that you are saying yes to, one thing that you hope to pursue more of in this next year, a value that you would like to see live out in your schedule and in the company of others. And know, of course, that proclaiming and stating it's not enough. But being viewed by friends and having companions for the journey, well, that makes a difference. And so I invite you now into the chat. I'll wait for just a little bit longer so that you all have a chance. And I'm seeing, of course, that, and somehow I missed this, so apologies, that the launch has been rescheduled. So sometimes my schedule works out just fine. As each of you name your intentions and your companions for the journey witness something to hold you accountable to moving forward. I'm so curious about what you'll be bringing forward. As you name each of these, I invite you, no matter how you keep your schedule, whether it's electronic or digital, or maybe in your partner's head, after we part ways today, to schedule time for it, even if only an hour. Make real your aspirations here in the company of others, and with the luxury of time that is the rest of your life. Live the life of your deepest values. Here in community, I part with one final story. I had the pleasure this past week of traveling with our membership coordinator, Shannon Foose, who, after witnessing a change in her own life, based on something she heard in this congregation around how she wanted to interact with people who were asking for money, people in the cold trying to make ends meet, and deciding some years ago that she would like to be able to, when possible, share what she has with those who ask for it, not overthinking or overanalyzing, but giving to those who ask and trusting that they will get what they need. That a practice of keeping what you can afford to share with you, a few dollars in your pocket or in the glove compartment, the practicalities of living the life and being the person you want to have shouldn't come down to budgets or schedules. And yet sometimes they do. It doesn't take 92 different steps the way Brownlee's woodworking does. Just one or two more steps today to live the life that you dream of. May it be so. Amen. Wherever you are, I invite you to extinguish your chalice with me and join in unison words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. We carry in our hearts all that we intend to be. We carry in our hearts the times that we have missed the mark and the times that we have lived out of our deepest values. But we carry our schedules in our brains or in our phones, in our day planners. We carry the resources we have to help and the hands we have to reach out when we are in need of help on our bodies. with the very best of intentions, but the luxury of time. May we go out into the world, reaching, helping, and scheduling. May it be so. Amen.